And y'all know I'm very, very excited. I teased it last Friday. I said we had a great opportunity to speak with someone who is running for the state Supreme Court justice seat that is currently open in Wisconsin. And so I'm honored and excited to be joined to Truth to Power by Judge Susan Crawford, who is a Dane County Circuit Court judge who is currently running to be your next state Supreme Court judge here in Wisconsin. Susan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kyle. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you joining us, man. And just to get right to it, I just want to start with a foundational level question to let everybody know exactly what this race is about and what you're running for. So, can you let people, help them understand exactly what a Supreme Court justice does and what is the purpose of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So, the Wisconsin Supreme Court decides cases every year that involve really important issues that affect all Wisconsinites. They affect our rights and freedoms, they affect the future of our state, and literally every case that's decided by the Wisconsin Supreme Court involves some issue of statewide importance. That's the criterion that they apply to decide whether to take a case up to the court, is whether it's a statewide issue. So this race in particular is really important because we've got one of the candidates, that's my opponent, Brad Schimmel, who is trying to politicize the court. He says he wants to get on the Wisconsin Supreme Court to be part of a support network for President Trump. So
Mm.
he's trying to politicize the court, and the court is a nonpartisan body. It's made up of 7 justices who are there to interpret the law and to apply it impartially and fairly in every case in front of it. They're not there to drive any kind of partisan agenda.
Okay, Susan, we'll definitely get into that and answer some questions
The
about that as
issue in
well.
this race is whether we have a court that continues to, be impartial and apply the law and protect the rights of citizens under our Constitution, or to have it turn into a rubber stamp for the Trump agenda.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. We'll definitely get into that conversation as well. But can you just discuss your
Yeah.
track record of success for serving Wisconsin citizens?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks. So I have always, throughout my career, both as a lawyer and a judge, looked for the opportunities to help people, to use my law degree and the experience that I've gained over the years to protect people's rights under our laws. So I started out as a prosecutor at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. I was taking felony cases to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, making sure that our communities were safe and that people who committed crimes and hurt other people were held accountable, and making sure that crime victims had a voice in the process and that their rights were upheld. That to me is a matter of common sense and the way our justice system should work.
Yeah, no,
Later, I was a lawyer representing people in our courts to protect their rights, often when the government had taken away their rights. So I worked to protect things like voting rights, women's access to reproductive health care services, and the rights of workers.
all right, that's the significant things that you've done, and I'm sure people are appreciative. But this race, I just want to know, this race is projected to have over $100 million poured into the state Supreme Court race. Why does it
Yeah.
matter who is elected, and how can it significantly impact people's lives? Because $100 million is a lot of money for one seat here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it sure is. It has really um, just been incredible to watch, and to and to be a part of a race that has taken on such national significance. And I think that is largely due to Elon Musk wading in and spending a lot of money on it. And I'm sure we'll get to that as well, Kyle. But fundamentally, this race is about making sure that our Wisconsin Supreme Court continues to do its job, which is to work for the people of Wisconsin, not to work for any kind of partisan political agenda. It's not there to work for Donald Trump. It's not there to work for Elon Musk. It's there to work for the people. And that's why I'm running.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You kind of brought up Elon Musk because something that you had said or your campaign had talked about in previous interviews is pointed out that Elon Musk does support your opponent in Brad Schimmel. And you said that
Yeah.
Elon is buying Brad Schimmel as he has given over $12 million to his campaign. Now, why do you believe this should be
Yeah.
concerning the voters as they head to the polls next Tuesday, April 1st?
Well, look, Elon Musk has said a couple of things. One is that he wants Brad Schimmel to be on the court to help protect the Trump agenda. And everybody knows that Elon Musk is kind of serving as Donald Trump's right-hand man right now in an unelected, unappointed, sort of unofficial capacity, but he's kind of rampaging through the federal government, firing people like air traffic controllers and people who provide health care to veterans and so forth. And he wants Brad Schimmel on the court. And he also has a case through one of his companies, Tesla. Tesla has sued the state of Wisconsin and
So I heard.
has a case. Yeah, has a case moving through the state court system. Elon Musk would like to sell more cars in Wisconsin, so he's watching his bottom line, and he wants to have some influence and um, uh, impact on the judiciary in Wisconsin. And I think he's thinks he's got his guy. He's trying to buy a seat for Brad Schimmel so he can have that kind of influence.
You're listening to The Truth to Power here on the award-winning 1017 The Truth, and we are blessed to be joined by Judge Susan Crawford, who is a Dane County Circuit Judge who is currently running to be your next state Supreme Court judge here in Wisconsin. Now, you talked a little bit about Elon. I get it. He's ruffled a lot of people's feathers here, especially since Donald Trump was inaugurated. But your campaign has also received some significant contributions by billionaire George Soros. How is that any different?
Well, the difference is that, first of all, those are contributions that went to the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. You know, they've contributed before. They get a lot of contributions from people who have an interest in the policies that they support. The Democratic Party of Wisconsin then has contributed to my campaign. But the amounts that we're talking about from my highest contributors, if you're counting folks who have contributed to the Democratic Party, are just dwarfed in comparison to what Elon Musk has put into this race. This is really unprecedented, Kyle, to have an individual like Elon Musk. He's the richest man in the world, and he has spent now, I think it's over $13 million on this race. And he's kind of taken over the campaign for Schimmel. You know, he's sending out mailers. He's got these false ads on TV and digital media, and he's got paid canvassers going door to door with flyers that say support the Trump agenda. He also has now offered voters $100 to hand over their data to him. He wants their data, and he's really trying to buy votes in that fashion. We shouldn't tolerate that as a state.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy. And thanks for providing that information. I also want to get into, you kind of talked about kind of the falsehoods that are coming out in the media. Nobody really knows what to believe, right? All the mudslinging happening during this campaign. And we, the voters, really just don't know what's real and what's fake. But there's one commercial that I saw that is the biggest one I feel like has been an attack ad on you. And it said that you oversaw a case where a man has sexually assaulted a 7-year-old girl by touching her inappropriately in a swimming pool. And you handed down a 4-year jail sentence with 6 years of supervision, which was short of the 10-year jail sentence that I believe was recommended or could have been handed down. Can you just defend that decision in that case?
Sure. You know, that case and the other cases they're attacking me on, those are cases I sent people to prison for several years on, and then ordered them to be on supervision for several more years after that. The case you're mentioning, that was a man who had no prior criminal record. The first day he spent in jail was on that sentence. That's something we have to take into consideration as judges. And the prosecutor's recommendation is one factor among others. So I apply the law when I'm making decisions. I'm not there to just rubber stamp what the prosecutor's asking me to do. I take it very seriously and I consider it, but I'm there to, as a judge, make the sentence that I believe will keep the community safe. And that's a guy who's going to be on supervision until he's over 70 years old. I felt that it was a decision that is going to protect families and children and communities in Wisconsin. So I do stand by that decision and the other decisions that I've made as a judge.
I must say, I appreciate you standing by what you did with that conviction, because that's exactly what Wisconsin should be looking for in somebody who actually, you know, stands by decisions that they make because there was a thorough decision that they made. Now, there are 4 major issues being discussed for this election: abortion rights with the 1849 law, the public sector unions' collective bargaining rights, voting rules, and congressional district boundaries. How do we know that you will be impartial despite being supported by Democratic donors?
Yeah, well, you know, one thing that I've done consistently throughout this race is I don't promise anybody anything. And I don't say that, you know, if you do, you know, if you support me, I'll do this for you. I've made no promises and have not said how I would decide any case that may end up or is already in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And my opponent does that. As soon as there was a judge in Wisconsin last year who found part of Act 10 to be unconstitutional, and the Schimmel campaign was out the next day with a press release condemning that decision.
Oh,
I
wow,
think
really?
just based on the headlines, yeah. And I don't make decisions on cases based on headlines. I wait till I have all the evidence in front of me, and I've heard the lawyers out on how they believe I should be interpreting the law. And on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I will listen to what the other justices have to say before making a final decision. That's the way I do it as a judge. I don't just make hot takes based on what I'm reading in the newspaper.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's so important for people to understand that, this is a nonpartisan race, but people have seen where the dollars has flown in. So I think it's important that you address that. And really,
Yeah.
my next simple question is this. Why would your opponent, Brad Schimmel, be bad for Wisconsinites?
He'd be bad for Wisconsinites because he wants to turn our Wisconsin Supreme Court into a political arm of a Republican presidency. He's made that really clear in so many ways, both by saying how he would decide cases, saying things like he thinks that 1849 abortion law is fine. He doesn't see any problem with it. If that went into effect in Wisconsin, it would mean that women in Wisconsin would be sent to Minnesota and Illinois and other states to get their health care. And Brad Schimmel has also said that as I just said, he thinks that that Act 10 decision is wrong. He has a history of making decisions based on partisan viewpoints and not on what the law requires. We saw him do that when he was a Republican attorney general in Wisconsin as well. He called himself Scott Walker's bag man when he was the attorney general of Wisconsin.
Mm.
So he was trying to take health care away from people, trying to overturn the Affordable Care Act as attorney general. If that had been successful, tens of thousands of Wisconsinites who have pre-existing health conditions would have lost access to their health care. This is somebody who's always been about the big money special interests. He was Scott Walker's bag man when he was attorney general, and I think he's trying out to be Elon Musk's bag man now.
I think that's interesting. There is, again, Elon Musk, as we talked about, had poured in over $12 million. So that might be something that Wisconsinites should think about as they go to the poll. Again, I'm speaking with Susan Crawford, who is running to be the next Wisconsin State Supreme Court Justice here. Before we wrap up, here's a couple more for you, Susan. Can you just tell, again, everybody why you want to serve Wisconsinites as their next Supreme Court Justice?
Yes, thanks, Kyle. Well, I want to be able to protect the rights of Wisconsinites under our laws and Constitution. And to me, we have laws and we have a Constitution to protect the rights of citizens. That's why they exist. So I will always be fair and impartial when I am making decisions on the Supreme Court. I'm going to be looking out for Wisconsin families and communities, making sure that they're safe and that their rights are upheld under our laws and Constitution. That's why I want to do this. I've always looked to using my experience the best way I can to protect people's rights.
Thank you so much, Susan. And lastly, listen, ultimately, what is at stake here in this Wisconsin State Supreme Court election to you?
I think it is about the future our of our state for our families and kids in Wisconsin. We want to make sure that we have a state where people's rights are respected and that we can exercise the freedoms that we are granted under our Constitution, and not have the court turn into an arm of a partisan agenda. So I think that's what it's all about here. And I ask anybody who's listening or watching today to vote for me. Early voting has begun. You don't have to wait till April 1st. It's a really, really critical election, and people need to make sure that their ballot is counted.
Susan, I have to say, just thank you so much for joining me, and then also just my little own commentary. I truly do appreciate you joining us to speak to 1017 The Truth, but I also appreciate one thing about you in this interview is that you didn't take any personal shots at Brad Schimmel. You just kept it all about his record, and based off some things we've seen in politics where people can really take personal shots, I must just, commend you for keeping it just, pretty clean and just talking about the reasons why you believe he would not fit Wisconsin and not taking any personal or negative shots towards him. So I just want to say I appreciate you for keeping that professional here today.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. Again, thanks for the opportunity to be on today.
Thank you so much. That is Susan Crawford, who is running for the state Supreme Court here in Wisconsin. Thank you again so much for Susan to join us. As she said, the election will take place next Tuesday, but early voting has begun. You can get out and vote now. On the other side, we will break down this interview and also talk about our weekend recap again. That was Susan Crawford, who is a Dane County Circuit Court judge who is currently running to be your next state Supreme Court justice. This is Truth to Power with Kyle Wallace. We'll talk about the interview and so much more coming up on the other side. Keep it locked.